Welcome back to Middlesex Moments, coming to you from Middlesex Community College. I'm Steve Minkler, and in studio with me are three guests here today to talk about all things mathematics here at Middlesex Community College. I have Professor Steve Krevisky.
Hi, everybody. Pi Day's coming.
We'll talk about Pi Day. And we have two students, John Guillamon and Chris Currie.
Hello, good morning.
And thank you guys for being with me today. And so let's talk a little bit about what first interested you guys as students in mathematics. Why, you are both stellar students here. You've been on the show before as members of our honors program and Phi Theta Kappa. But math seems to be kind of a, if you will, a common denominator for students who excel in college. And what got you first interested in mathematics?
So I wasn't originally good at mathematics, or certainly not in high school. And when I came here, I was actually starting at the lowest level, basically elementary algebra. So in a space of 2 years or so, I've gone from there all the way to now differential equations with Professor K. So for me, I really enjoy the logic behind it and how there's so many approaches to a single problem, especially in algebra. There's so many different pathways, and you sort of have to pick the most efficient one or the one that works best for you. There's maybe one answer. Well, obviously in many cases there's multiple answers depending on the function, but you can create sort of a unique path and sort of set up how to solve your problems, and I enjoy that a lot, and I enjoy experimenting with it.
Okay. Well, first, congratulations on going through really that whole sequence of math and starting out and progressing in the way you have. So it sounds like mathematics is a tool for you to solve problems more than just simply the love of numbers.
Oh, absolutely. And now, since we're doing differential equations, we can see the connection between math and sort of real-world phenomenon like population growth, and we do that in statistics as well, but especially a lot of them are governed by differential equations. So I'm really enjoying seeing it all connected and how they're the underlying logic of our world, basically, or our phenomenal world.
I can speak to math being used as a tool as well. I've experienced welding for work, and I've done a lot of applied mathematics for just figuring out different dimensions of things and how much to material to order or whatnot. So I really enjoy trying to learn and understand mathematics to create a better foundation so I can apply them to real-world scenarios.
And the two of you are doing projects in the honors program that can speak a little bit to the connection of mathematics and your topics. So Chris, I know we learned from you last time that you're looking at the properties and strengths of concrete as a construction material.
Correct.
This has to all come into play with what you're researching for that project.
It does. It's a lot of statistics as well, because I've been doing a big portion that goes into the environmental impacts concrete holds on this earth. So I'm analyzing a lot of data on statistics on where that pollution is coming from and just speak to the strengths. Taking a lot of those numbers and seeing if different supplements in that concrete is truly affecting that strength. So it's a lot of data analyzation, which is very interesting.
Great. And Professor Steve Krevisky, at Middlesex, we are a college that offers an associate degree, more commonly like a 2-year college. So how common is it for a college like Middlesex to have courses in differential equations and upper-level calculus?
Well, that's a good question, Steve. I think in the last few years, partly due to the influx of engineering students in conjunction with Professor Lin, we've been able to offer these courses much more often than we used to. We always offered Calc 1 and 2. Calc 3 was offered kind of irregularly, and now we've got a rotation where we do Calc 3 in the fall and DiffyQ, as we like to call it, in the spring. So I think that's been a good thing, and differential equations, related to John's point, sort of ties together differentiation and integration techniques from Calc 1 and 2, along with algebra. And so we've been learning different ways of solving differential equations, which for our listeners is to say, if the derivative of a function is, let's say, 2, then what function produced that derivative? So we do all sorts of interesting things with that, and I enjoy working with the students, and I'll talk more about that later related to the other things we're doing.
Well, with the courses we offer here, can a student get a degree in mathematics from Middlesex and transfer to a university?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been part of the Transfer and Articulation Pathways, or TAP program. We had a meeting at Manchester last week about that. So that's also a fairly recent development in the last few years, where pre-calculus, our Math 186 is the gateway course, and then both John and Chris are in the calculus sequence, so that, yes, they should be able to transfer to the four-year schools and then major in math or minor in math in conjunction with the engineering, and I hope you'll both do that.
Well, and before we started the show today, we were talking about an engineering collaboration that both you guys are involved in with students from UConn and Gateway Community College. Talk a little about that.
Correct.
Chris? Okay.
We're working on a project that's sponsored by Sikorsky, and we're taking a virtual reality headset and trying to implement a training program through that headset. And this training is mainly meant for technicians and mechanics to see if virtual reality can be used as a tool to properly teach them, like, workplace steps. Like, if you're assembling a helicopter or an engine, there's certain pieces and parts that go together. Can you recreate that environment in virtual reality? So yeah, we're working with our other students, 2 from UConn and 1 from Gateway, to create models in SolidWorks of a Lego helicopter, and then can be assembled in a virtual reality program, as well as through paper instructions and comparing data results to see if one is more effective than the other. We're still early on in this process, doing a lot of SolidWorks modeling at the moment, but we're excited to see where it takes us and what the outcomes are.
And I would imagine that the coursework that you're doing in mathematics has direct application, as you were saying, to analyzing the results, but also how someone might program the virtual reality environment itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A lot of geometry. That's a lot of what we do in SolidWorks. A lot of, say, Calc 2, a lot of it's automated through the program, but it's a lot of the same concepts of taking, a shape and sort of rotating it around the axis, or turning it into a three-dimensional shape. So that's a lot of the functions we use in SolidWorks. That's a lot of the application. That's how it works.
There is a good frame of mind that you put yourself in to think of something in all 3 dimensions and be able to take it in your head and rotate it and spin it and look inside of something if it's hollow, or the SolidWorks programs helps you do that on a digital screen, but being able to do it in your mind is very related to mathematics as well.
Professor Steve Krevisky, this has to be exciting for you, I think, as an instructor, to be working with students like John and Chris, who are just so eager to soak in everything you have to offer as a professor of math, but the math department, all of your colleagues and the colleagues in engineering. What are some other applications that you've seen as a math professor, not just engineering, but with the students that you work with at this upper level of mathematics?
Well, it's been a pleasure to work with Chris and John and the Math Club and other things. The Math Club has been very active this year, and John and Chris are both officers, president and vice president, and that they were part of our booth with What Can I Do with the Major back in the fall that we do every year. And I appreciate the enthusiasm that that they display in the Math Club, and lots of times in class, John will already have a problem of some kind on the board even before the class starts. And one of the things that's nice vis-a-vis your earlier question about connections is that lots of times our students are seeing the same topic in different courses. Like, I think you've been taking stuff like statics and dynamics and things like that. So in the fall, when John was in my Calc 3 class, we start the semester with vectors, and you see that in like 2 or 3 other classes. So that's nice. And I still enjoy the students after all these years, and I still have a great enthusiasm for recruiting people for the math club and the math contest. And I think, Chris and John, I think you've seen me talk to a student and say, "Are you a math recruit?" And that includes when we're down in the tutoring center as well. So I still enjoy it, and I have the enthusiasm for it. Then math shows up in so many areas. As you know, Steve, my love for baseball statistics, the sabermetrics, as Bill James called it years ago. So, math shows up in different ways, and I hope more students can come through the pipeline the way both of you did.
We'll talk more about the math program, the math club, and other ways that we connect classroom learning to activities on our campus after this short break. You're listening to Middlesex Moments from Middlesex Community College.
At Middlesex Community College, we help students discover their future.
MxCC is our college.
With affordable payment options and easy access, come see how Middlesex can be your college.
MxCC is my college.
Classes in Middletown, Meriden, and online.
MxCC is our college.
Middlesex Community College, your future.
Welcome back to Middlesex Moments, coming to you from Middlesex Community College. I'm Steve Minkler, together with my guests, Professor Steve Krevisky and students John Guillamon and Chris Currie. We've been talking about all things mathematics at the college. And let's talk a little bit about the math club. We started talking about that before the break. And John, how many students are in the math club? How big is this group?
Well, it's quite interesting. When I started, that was last semester, I walked into the first day, and it was just Professor K and our other advisor, Professor Carmona, in an empty room, and it was quite depressing. So I got Chris involved, and Chris is also a great friend of Professor Carmona, and we sort of revitalized it. So we started from like a little group of, maybe Chris.
It's been the four of us, and we have watched it grow.
Oh, absolutely.
Last meeting we had a good attendance of about 15 students in total. So we've done more events and promoted it, it has grown, and we're excited to see that.
Yeah, I remember being in Wheaton Hall and walking by the classroom, and it was pretty full the day that I walked by, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the activities that the Math Club is involved in that are available for other students and the public. I mean, one of the things that's happening actually right now as this show airs on radio is Pi Day. And what's Pi Day all about?
So we're celebrating Pi Day in the pavilion here. We're handing out pizza and pie to students, and we're also sponsoring a game of trivia as well as a volume guessing game to see how many marbles you can fit in a jar. So we're doing a prize for that as well as some of the trivias, and we're just excited to get some students involved with the campus event and eat some pizza, have some fun.
There you go. And it's based on the mathematical symbol pi, which is 3.14, although 3/14 is a Saturday, so that's why we're doing it today.
Correct.
Right, the 11th, okay. The Math Club, you've got some trips and contests coming up as well. John, what's the trip that you have coming up in April?
Yeah, we're planning a trip to Boston. We're going to go to the Science Museum. So if anyone wants a very affordable trip to Boston, then you don't even have to be in the Math Club. This is open to any student and even guests. I believe guests have to have an ID, however. But
they do. You can sign up in Janet Klink's office. That's Founders Hall, room 123. Again, it's April 18th. We're going to the Boston Museum of Science on a coach bus.
Awesome.
There is a second option if you would like to take the bus to Boston and get dropped off at Faneuil Hall. But Math Club organized the event and sponsored the tickets to the museum for just the low cost of $5 for the entire day.
Oh, that's great. Bus and admission. That's fantastic. And another event we have coming up, I'll ask Professor Krevisky about, is the math contest. And this is a statewide math contest, not just at Middlesex, correct?
Yes, thank you, Steve. And I'm hoping Chris and John will be two of our high scorers. I've been involved with the math contest system-wide for over 20 years. We give it at all the 12 community colleges, and it's sponsored by our statewide math organization, the Mathematical Association of Two-Year Colleges of Connecticut, known as Matycon, Matyconn. So I'm one of the coordinators of it, along with a colleague from Tunxus. I always have a baseball question on it, so participants beware. But I'm known for that. So we've expanded the contest in the last few years from 20 to 25 questions, and there's a lot of challenge to it. Although we've kept the level of the math at intermediate algebra, there's logic problems, geometry, could be like Pythagorean theorem, quadratic equations, all that good stuff. And so we've had very good participation at Middlesex. It's going to be Tuesday, April 7th from 3 to 5 in the afternoon in room 311 up in Wheaton Hall, right next to the math office. So the students have 2 hours to do this, and unlike our regular test where we give partial credit, on the math contest we only give credit for the correct answer, right or wrong. So the students have to remember to transfer their answer from their scrap paper to the answer sheet, because that's what I grade. So we've had good participation. I'll often give my students extra credit for participating regardless of how they score. And so I'm looking forward to another good year. And all the different campuses give the contest. They send to me and my colleague the top 3 scores. And then at our spring Matycon meeting later in April, then we give prizes to system winners. And I'm hoping, John and Chris, you will be among those people. So I've enjoyed doing that for many years, and we're putting the contest together, and that's been a great love of mine for many years.
And Middlesex Community College students have been pretty well represented in the upper tier of the contest participants, right, in terms of prizes and
yes,
how they've
we've
scored.
had a number of system winners over the years, and we've had a lot of talented students here in the math realm, including John and Chris. So I'm hoping you guys will hit one out of the park, to use the baseball analogy.
If other students are looking to get some help prepare, we encourage you to come to Math Club as well, and we'll do practice problems that would help you relate to the contest. So hopefully we're successful.
Yes, related to that, that's a good point by Chris, that I make copies of last year's contest available, because it's not a good idea to go into it cold. So if you've seen last year's test, you know the format, you know what types of questions we ask, and that way I think that gives you some mental preparation for the 2-hour contest.
So we have the Math Club and the various activities around the Math Club and the Math Contest. There's also a way that students who excel in mathematics can be recognized through an honor society. Is that right, Professor Krevisky? Something called Mu Alpha Theta?
Yes, Mu Alpha Theta is the National Math Honor Society, and for the last few years we've been inducting members into it. It doesn't cost very much, and so what we do is later in the spring, after the math contest, we have sort of a double place award ceremony that we honor our local math contest winners, and then we also induct people into Mu Alpha Theta, and I think that's also a good way to recognize our students. And I also want to say that Professor Carmona has been very valuable as my co-advisor to making the club function.
Great, thanks. John, I want to get back to you for a second. Earlier in the show you talked about how earlier in your career here at Middlesex you took the pre-algebra courses and the courses that really kind of were foundational, maybe because, as you said, you weren't super at mathematics until you found a passion for math. So what advice might you give to a student who says, I can't do math, I've got math anxiety? What might you tell them to overcome that?
Okay, the best thing you should do is start from the foundations. I think the biggest problem with math is that people will sort of get by with sort of passing grades, getting further and further along in the track, but they still haven't developed the foundations. And I'm saying going back to arithmetic and so forth. People have problems with that, and especially algebra. And that's what we're seeing in sort of our classes, DiffEQ and so forth. People sort of haven't internalized some of the basic properties. So I actually liked the path that I took. I got to pre-calculus in high school, but going back was the better way to go because I sort of became very adept at fractions and all these sort of basic rules that add up to the greater picture. So there is an internal logic between it. It's made, math, you have to recognize, is made to be as simple as possible. It's not made to confuse you. There's symbols, but they all have a clear, definite meaning, and it's not made for, anyone can understand it. You just need to put the time and start from the beginning. If you go too far, you'll get confused.
I can attest to that as well, and it is good to start in those like college algebra type courses, something of the lower rank, just to refresh yourself if you're not feeling confident, and really make sure you have those beginning tools secure in your head. And that way, when you do kind of continue to move up, you are have a nice steady foundation that you can work off of, and it's beneficial because no one cannot not do math. It's just a matter of knowing what you'd know and not know.
Mm-hmm. And here at Middlesex, we have actually free what we call Bootcamp Workshops that we offer in the summer that, I think a lot of people have the misperception that it's for students who did not do well in math, and it is for students who do fit, who do need that extra help. But I think it's a great refresher for anybody, like you're suggesting, going back to the basics, get your head around math again, especially if you haven't taken a math class for a year or two or more.
Yeah.
If I may jump in to add to what John and Chris have said, what we're finding, for instance, in our DiffEQ classes, in terms of your point, John, about the connectedness of it, that when we're solving differential equations several times, and we're only just about halfway through the semester, how many times have we seen, and Chris, you know about this, the connections with logarithmic and exponential properties that go back to pre-calc, or problems with exponents. And John has functioned as, like, in a way, a second teacher, coming up to the board and working with students. And I like an active class, and they know all my jokes by now, and they keep track of what hats I'm wearing. So
awesome.
So that makes it fun for me as well as I hope for the students. So that connectedness is a good point you made. And I would also like to add for our listeners that most people have to work at math. I don't think too many people are just so natural at it. So, and that includes thinking about, when you take a test, you should think of it as a learning experience. What are you strong at? What are you weak at? And I allow note cards in my classes, and in our advanced classes, there's so many integral and derivative formulas that rather than try to memorize it and forget it, it makes sense to have those sheets or note cards in front of them, because I'll often say to my students, consider yourselves researchers. Sort of like analogous perhaps to you look up something in the baseball encyclopedia, and I've got one in my office, by the way. So I think that's the way I like to approach it, and that the foundation builds up to these other things, which is why John and Chris, I think, have been so successful.
Great.
To go off of a point that Krevisky had mentioned, mathematics is really versatile in our other classes as well, outside of the pure math classes. For example, we were using logarithms in my chemistry class to examine rates. So we do find uses for these mathematical terms in other classes, and having that foundation and understanding really strengthens that connection you make outside of math class.
That sounds great. Well, in applying mathematical principles here in radio production, 30 minutes minus the time we're at now means we're just about out of time for our show. I can do some subtraction. No, seriously, we are at the end of our show time, and I want to thank Professor Steve Krevisky and students John Guillamon and Chris Currie for joining me on Middlesex Moments today. And I'd like to thank all of you, for our listeners, for joining us. And as always, you're welcome to visit us in person, hopefully in a math class, at our main campus at 100 Training Hill Road in Middletown, or at our Meriden Center at Platt High School, where we offer afternoon and evening classes 4 days a week. And of course, you can visit us online 24/7 at mxcc.edu. From Middlesex Community College, I'm Steve Minkler, and we hope to see you again soon.